On Mother's Day, during a celebration attended by 100 guests, my daughter-in-law subjected me to public humiliation. She commanded me to leave the gathering and prepare the meal, labeling me as a useless old woman. I complied without question. Later, as I was serving myself, she deliberately knocked my plate to the floor, forcing me to clean up the mess. I had intended to present her with $40,000, a sum I had meticulously saved. Instead, I gave her an envelope containing a photograph that caused her to faint. I'm so pleased to have you joining me. Please follow my account to the conclusion and kindly inform me of your location so I can gauge the reach of my story. My name is Rebecca, and I am 60 years old. I never anticipated that at my age I would find myself in the middle of my own kitchen, cleaning up spilled food from the floor while 100 attendees observed from the dining room doorway. The plate had shattered against the tiled surface with a resounding crash, instantly silencing all conversations within the house. The entire ordeal began as a seemingly ordinary celebration. It marked my son Daniel's 35th birthday, and as was customary each year, Luna had been insistent on hosting an elaborate party. Naturally, the entire responsibility for cooking, cleaning, and all preparations fell upon me, while she circulated amongst the guests, embodying the role of the perfect hostess and accepting accolades for a pristine home and a delectable meal that she had not remotely contributed to. That morning, I had risen at 5 o'clock to commence the extensive preparations. A roasted turkey, various side dishes, and homemade desserts, all favourites of Daniel since his childhood, were on the menu. After 3 hours of peeling potatoes and chopping vegetables, my arthritic hands ached considerably. However, I paid it no mind, as it was all for my son, for my family. Luna finally made an appearance in the kitchen around midday, impeccably attired in a white ensemble that likely cost more than my monthly Social Security disbursement. She observed me working by the stove, her lips curling into that familiar expression of disdain. "Rebecca, I trust you haven't oversalted the meat this time," she remarked without even offering a greeting. "My friends are quite accustomed to fine cuisine." I swallowed hard and offered a nod. I had been residing with them for 5 years, ever since becoming a widow, and I had long since learned that any attempt at verbal defense only exacerbated the situation. Daniel, engrossed in his demanding work schedule, was largely oblivious to these subtle yet constant interactions between Luna and myself. He viewed his wife as an angel who had magnanimously agreed to house his mother. The initial guests began to arrive by 2 in the afternoon. I remained in the kitchen, attending to the service of the dishes, while Luna greeted everyone in the living room. I could discern her tinkling laughter, her charming pleasantries, and the effusive compliments she received regarding her exceptional hospitality. "Daniel is truly fortunate to have you," I overheard our neighbour, Mrs. Henderson, say to her. "Not many wives would undertake such an effort to orchestrate such an elegant affair." Luna accepted the praise with a show of feigned humility, fully aware that I was in the background, perspiring over the hot stove while she basked in the limelight. As the time for the meal finally arrived, Luna entered the kitchen, a cool smile gracing her lips, a smile she reserved exclusively for me. "Rebecca, I would like you to serve the dinner," she stated. However, there was a noticeable shift in her tone, an underlying harshness, a more pronounced cruelty. "And please wear the apron. We wouldn't want our guests to mistake you for another attendee." A flush of shame spread across my cheeks. The apron was one thing, but the manner in which she delivered the instruction, implying I was no more than a domestic staff member, rather than the proprietress of the very home where I had raised my son, pierced me like a sharp blade. I proceeded to serve plate after plate, bearing heavy trays that aggravated my aching back. The guests engaged in lively conversation as I shuttled back and forth between the kitchen and the dining room. Some offered polite smiles, while others simply disregarded me as if I were mere furniture. When I finally had the opportunity to sit down with my own plate, Luna approached from behind. She had been indulging in wine throughout the afternoon, and her voice carried that dangerous edge that surfaced when she had consumed too much. "What exactly do you believe you are doing?" she inquired loudly, her voice projecting sufficiently to capture the attention of several guests. I'm eating," I stammered, feeling a surge of confusion. "Eating here amongst the guests?" Her voice escalated further. "Rebecca, really, you are perfectly aware that your designated area is the kitchen." The ensuing silence was profound. I could sense the collective gaze of everyone at the table fixed upon me. My heart began to pound with such ferocity that I was convinced it was audible to all. "Luna, I began, but she cut me off abruptly. "Get up," she commanded, her voice ringing with authority. "Return to the kitchen where you belong, you utterly useless old woman." Those words struck me with the impact of a physical blow. Useless old woman, in front of 100 people, many of whom I had known for years. Neighbors, members of my church, Daniel's friends, all of them now looking at me with a mixture of shock and pity that made me yearn to vanish from existence. I rose slowly, my legs trembling uncontrollably. I remained silent, utterly incapable of speech, my throat constricted. My eyes burned with unshed tears that I steadfastly refused to let fall in their presence. However, Luna's tirade was not yet complete. As I passed by her carrying my plate, she deliberately stuck out her foot. It was not an accidental misstep. It was a calculated, cruel act. I stumbled, and my plate, along with its contents, launched into the air, crashing onto the kitchen floor in a chaotic explosion of food and shattered ceramic. "Look at what you've done," she shrieked, adopting an air of injured innocence as if the mishap were entirely my fault. "Clean up this disaster immediately." I knelt on the cold floor, my hands quivering as I began to gather the fragments of porcelain. The food had splattered everywhere. Mashed potatoes, gravy, pieces of turkey. All the labor of my morning was reduced to a pile of refuse on the floor. Yet, as I cleaned, a profound shift occurred within me. It was not a sudden, dramatic transformation, but a quiet, cold solidification, akin to the frost that forms on windows during winter. As my knees protested against the hard tiles and Luna continued to issue sharp commands from above, I made a resolute decision. I had endured 5 years of this existence, 5 years of cumulative and significant embarrassments, 5 years of being treated as an inconvenient obstruction within the very home where I had nurtured my son, 5 years of observing Luna's manipulative tactics, her extravagant spending of Daniel's earnings, her transformation of my cherished home into her personal dominion. I finished cleaning in absolute silence. The guests had resumed their conversations, though I could still feel their occasional pitying glances. By the time I rose from the floor, Luna had already returned to the living room, her laughter echoing as if the preceding events had never transpired. However, I knew that something fundamental had shifted. Something had irrevocably changed in that kitchen, amidst the scattered shards of ceramic and the wasted meal. That evening, after the last guest had departed and Luna had retired for the night, content with her performance, I remained awake in my modest room. Within my desk drawer lay an envelope I had meticulously prepared over several weeks, an envelope containing $40,000 in cash. This was money I had saved over many years, intending it as a gift for Luna. However, my plans for this sum had now irrevocably altered, plans that Luna would never have foreseen. The $40,000 had been my carefully guarded secret for the past 3 years. Each month, upon receiving my Social Security check, I would set aside a portion of it. Sometimes it was $20, other times $50, and occasionally more, particularly if I managed to economize on medication or if Daniel, unbeknownst to Luna, provided me with additional funds. My original intention was to present this sum to Luna for their upcoming wedding anniversary, harboring a foolish hope that perhaps, just perhaps, it might lead to a modicum of improved treatment. How utterly naive I had been. The morning following the party, I awoke with a clarity I hadn't experienced in years. As I prepared coffee in the quiet kitchen, I retrieved the envelope from its discreet hiding place behind the spice rack. $40,000, meticulously counted in $100 bills, neatly stacked. Money that Luna would never learn of. However, there was another envelope as well, a smaller one that I had been surreptitiously assembling over the past 6 weeks. This one did not contain currency. Instead, it held something infinitely more valuable, the truth. The entire sequence of events had commenced 2 months prior, during a casual visit to the supermarket. There I observed Luna exiting a downtown hotel, accompanied by a gentleman who was unequivocally not my son. Initially, I attributed it to a trick of the light, a misperception. After all, I am 60 years old and my eyesight is not what it once was. However, as I witnessed them embracing passionately beside the man's gleaming red sports car, I knew my initial doubt was unfounded. Marcus Holloway. I recognized him instantly. He had been Daniel's closest confidant since their college days, the best man at his wedding, and a frequent guest at our dinner table every Friday evening. The very man who embraced my son like a brother while simultaneously engaging in an illicit affair with his wife. That night, sleep eluded me. I lay awake, wrestling with the dilemma of how to proceed. Should I inform Daniel immediately? Should I confront Luna directly? Yet, my understanding of my daughter-in-law's nature made me certain she would vehemently deny any wrongdoing. She possessed a remarkable talent for manipulation, an uncanny ability to sow seeds of doubt in others' perceptions of reality. Consequently, I resolved to observe and meticulously document her actions. Over the subsequent weeks, I began to pay an unprecedented level of attention. I noticed Luna's routine shopping excursions every Tuesday and Thursday afternoon, always conducted with a sense of urgency, and invariably accompanied by an excessive level of personal adornment for what appeared to be simple errands. I also observed Marcus's increasingly frequent visits to our home when Daniel was absent, each visit invariably accompanied by some pretense, such as returning a borrowed item or collecting something he had left behind. One afternoon, while Luna was showering after one of her shopping trips, I took it upon myself to examine her mobile phone. I acknowledge that this was in transgression, but after years of endured indignities, my conscience had developed certain convenient allowances. The messages I discovered were profoundly disturbing. They not only confirmed the extramarital affair, but also revealed their shared amusement at Daniel's expense. Luna had apparently communicated with Marcus, detailing how naive her husband was, how easily he could be manipulated, and how his unwavering trust rendered him utterly unsuspecting. "He's like a little puppy," Luna had reportedly written. "He readily complies with my every request and provides me with everything I desire. Meanwhile, you and I can indulge in all the pleasures we wish." Marcus's reply was equally contemptible. "Poor Daniel," he had written, "he's always been too good for his own benefit. At least his wealth is subsidizing these romantic escapades for us." I read these messages, my body trembling with a palpable rage. Not only were they betraying my son, but they were squandering his hard-earned money to facilitate their illicit relationship. Daniel dedicated 60 hours a week to maintaining the extravagant lifestyle Luna demanded, and she, in turn, was diverting these funds to finance her infidelity. However, the revelation did not end there. There was far more. By reviewing the message history backward, I uncovered that the affair had been ongoing for over 2 years. 2 full years of deception, betrayal, and derisive laughter directed at my son. And most disturbingly, they had been actively planning to orchestrate a divorce once Luna could secure a substantial financial settlement. I just need a couple more years, Luna had communicated. Once I'm divorced, I'll be entitled to half of everything: the house, the savings, the investments. Then we can finally be together openly, with ample resources to live comfortably. Marcus's response was chilling. And what about old Rebecca? She'll be the first to be dealt with. Daniel will place her in some inexpensive care facility, Luna had replied. I'll finally have the house entirely to myself. An inexpensive care facility? After dedicating years to raising Daniel from infancy, after managing the household for 5 years, all while they pursued their seemingly idyllic existence, Luna had already predetermined my fate. A meager establishment where I would be left to languish and fade away, while she reveled in the fortune my son had painstakingly accumulated. That night, with hands that trembled uncontrollably, I began to capture screenshots of every communication, every photograph, every meticulously documented detail of their perfidy. I also commenced discreet surveillance, documenting their clandestine meetings with photographs taken from a considerable distance. Within a span of 3 weeks, I had amassed sufficient evidence to dismantle the facade of the perfect life Luna had constructed upon a foundation of deceit. However, I understood the necessity of a strategic approach. Simply presenting all the incriminating material to Daniel en masse would be insufficient. Luna possessed an unparalleled ability to manipulate any given situation to her advantage. I required the opportune moment. That perfect moment materialized the morning after the party, when Luna descended for breakfast, a smug smile gracing her features, a residual expression from the previous evening's triumph. "Good morning, Rebecca," she chirped with a saccharine, insincere tone. "I trust you've learned your lesson from last night. We wouldn't want any further embarrassing displays, would we?" I met her gaze as I prepared her coffee, precisely as she preferred it. 2 spoonfuls of sugar, a splash of cream, an identical ritual I had performed each morning for the past 5 years. "By the way," she continued, settling at the table and extending her immaculately manicured hands, "Marcus will be joining us for lunch today. Daniel has that important meeting that will keep him occupied until late, so please prepare something special. You know how much Marcus appreciates a well-prepared home-cooked meal." The irony was so palpable one could almost slice it with a knife. Marcus coming for lunch at Daniel's table while my son toiled diligently to support the very woman who was betraying them both. "Certainly," I replied calmly. "I will prepare something exceptionally special." Luna smiled, evidently satisfied with my apparent acquiescence. She remained blissfully unaware that nestled within my desk drawer, alongside the envelope containing $40,000, resided another envelope. This one contained a single photograph, a photograph destined to irrevocably alter the course of her life. It was an image I had captured the previous week, during one of my discreet observations, when I had followed them to their preferred hotel. A clear, sharp, and irrefutable depiction. Luna and Marcus in a compromising position that left absolutely no room for doubt regarding the nature of their clandestine relationship. However, that photograph was merely the prelude. What Luna failed to comprehend was that I possessed evidence of something far more sinister, something that would not only obliterate her marriage, but could potentially devastate her entire existence. As I watched her sip her coffee, radiating an aura of carefree arrogance, I savored the present moment. Very soon, that smug expression would be permanently erased from her face. The unearthing of the truth had commenced 3 weeks prior, when I retained the services of Samuel Hayes, a private investigator operating from a modest office situated above a downtown bakery. This decision was not made lightly. The $500 I paid him represented nearly 2 months of my personal savings, but I recognized the necessity of professional assistance. Samuel, a man in his 50s, exuded an air of discretion and efficiency. Upon presenting him with the initial photographs I had taken of Luna and Marcus, he offered a knowing nod, a look suggesting he had encountered such scenarios countless times before. "Mrs. Collins," he had stated, "I understand your predicament, but you must realize that this situation runs deeper than you might initially perceive." His cryptic remark remained elusive until he returned a week later, bearing a file that fundamentally challenged my understanding of Luna. My daughter-in-law's true identity was not Luna Miller, as she had presented herself upon marrying Daniel. Her actual name was Carmen Valdez, and she harbored a hidden past meticulously concealed throughout their 7 years of marriage. "Your daughter-in-law was apprehended in Nevada 10 years ago for marital fraud," Samuel explained, presenting official documentation. "She entered into marriage with 3 distinct individuals within a 2-year time frame, systematically draining their bank accounts before absconding." My hands trembled as I perused the police reports. They included photographs of Luna, younger in appearance but unmistakably her, alongside details of her aliases: Carmen Valdez, Sofia Martinez, Isabella Rodriguez. Each identity had been meticulously crafted to ensnare affluent, vulnerable men. "How is this even possible?" I whispered. Daniel conducted a thorough background check prior to their engagement. He is extremely diligent in such matters. Samuel offered a somber smile. "Your daughter-in-law is a professional, madam. The documents your son accessed were all expertly forged: birth certificates, academic credentials, employment verification letters, all fabricated by an organization specializing in creating pristine identities for individuals engaged in fraudulent activities." The file contained a wealth of additional information. At the time of her marriage to Daniel, Luna was legally wed to a gentleman named Robert Sanchez in Las Vegas. Consequently, her union with my son was, in essence, legally null and void. However, an even more disturbing revelation awaited. "There is more," Samuel continued, his voice lowering to a hushed tone. "Your daughter-in-law was not acting alone in Nevada. Her primary accomplice was an individual known as Marcus Holloway." My world felt as though it had abruptly ceased to exist. Marcus, Daniel's closest friend, had been a regular presence at our dinner table for 7 years, all the while orchestrating a plan to systematically dismantle my son's life from within. Marcus and Carmen collaborated in defrauding 3 separate victims, Samuel elaborated. The modus operandi was consistently the same. She would marry the target. He would ingratiate himself as a close friend to gain their trust, and collectively they would deplete the victim's financial resources before disappearing. "Why did they not abscond after defrauding Daniel?" I inquired, though a part of me already anticipated the answer. "Because Daniel proved to be a more substantial asset than they initially anticipated." Samuel replied, "Your son has amassed a considerable fortune over these years. Rather than absconding with a fixed sum, they opted to remain and exploit this cash cow for as long as possible." He presented further documentation, including bank statements that revealed regular transfers from Daniel's accounts to offshore accounts under the control of Luna and Marcus. For 7 years, they had been systematically siphoning off small sums that Daniel would likely overlook. $500 here, $1,000 there, Samuel stated. Collectively, our estimation is that they have pilfered approximately $250,000 during the course of the marriage. $250,000, $250,000, the money Daniel had worked so tirelessly to earn, Money he believed was securing his family's future had been directly channeled into the accounts of his two most trusted predators. Yet the most harrowing discovery was yet to come. "There is one further piece of information, Mrs. Collins," Samuel said, exhibiting a moment of hesitation for the first time. "Something I uncovered during my investigation into Carmen's past." He handed me a separate, distinct folder. Within its confines were newspaper clippings dating back 12 years, originating from a small town in Arizona. The headline sent an icy chill down my spine. "Young woman disappears after confronting scammers." The victim's name was Elena Vasquez, a 26-year-old teacher who had discovered that her fiancé, in league with his best friend, was engaged in a fraudulent scheme against her. Elena had threatened to report them to the authorities. 3 days later, she vanished without a trace. Her body was never recovered. "Are you suggesting that Luna—" I was unable to complete the sentence. "I am not suggesting anything," Samuel stated with careful precision. However, Carmen Valdez and Marcus Holloway were indeed in Arizona during that period, operating under assumed identities, and Elena Vasquez had uncovered their deception precisely as you have. The air seemed to vanish from my lungs. Not only was Luna a master manipulator and con artist, but she was potentially far more sinister. And here I was living under the same roof with her, privy to her darkest secrets. "What course of action do you advise?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. Samuel slowly closed the folder. "Be exceedingly cautious, Mrs. Collins. Individuals like Carmen will not hesitate to resort to any measure necessary to safeguard their secrets if they suspect you possess knowledge of their activities." He did not need to articulate the unspoken implication. I understood it perfectly. That evening, I returned home, the incriminating file concealed within my shopping bag. Luna was in the living room, engrossed in a romantic comedy, her laughter emanating from the television. She appeared utterly ordinary, almost innocent. But now, as I looked at her, I saw the predatory nature that lay beneath the surface. "How was your day, Rebecca?" she inquired without turning her head. "I trust you did not deplete our funds at the supermarket. You know Daniel is quite concerned about our expenses." The irony was utterly sickening. Luna, who had absconded with $250,000, was admonishing me for the cost of groceries. "It was a perfectly ordinary day," I replied, maintaining a steady tone. "Nothing out of the ordinary." However, as I ascended the stairs to my room, I knew that everything had fundamentally changed. On my desk, alongside the envelope containing $40,000 and the photograph of Luna with Marcus, I now possessed something far more potent: the complete and undeniable evidence of Carmen Valdez's true identity. Daniel was due to return home within 2 hours. Luna would be awaiting him, her signature smug smile in place, her kisses laced with deceit. Marcus would arrive for dinner on Friday, as he always did, perpetuating the charade of the loyal best friend. But this time, the circumstances would be different. This time, I would have the opportunity to expose the two predators who had been systematically preying upon my family for years. I merely had to await the opportune moment. And that moment presented itself sooner than I had anticipated. The following day, Luna announced her intention to host a special dinner in celebration of Daniel's recent promotion at work. An intimate affair, she specified, for close family and a select few cherished friends. "I'll certainly invite Marcus," she stated casually, "and perhaps a few of my acquaintances from the club. It will be an absolutely perfect evening." As I overheard her meticulously detailing her upcoming event, a genuine smile, the first in weeks, graced my lips. Luna was astute about one aspect. At least, the evening was destined for perfection, though not in the way she envisioned. The sealed envelope containing the photograph of her and Marcus remained tucked away in my desk drawer. However, I'd come to realize that mere proof of her infidelity wouldn't suffice. I now possessed irrefutable evidence of something far more ruinous, and when the opportune moment arose, I intended to unveil it all. The meticulously planned special dinner was set for Saturday evening. Luna had dedicated the entire week to orchestrating every minute detail with the unwavering focus of a military commander preparing for a crucial offensive. She extended invitations to 12 individuals, Marcus, naturally, a few acquaintances from her tennis circle, 2 neighboring couples, and Daniel's business associates, whom she deemed vital for his professional advancement. As per her custom, I was an unseen participant in her grand designs, relegated solely to the role of an informal culinary assistant. For 3 consecutive days, my tasks involved preparing hors d'oeuvres, rigorously testing new recipes, and ensuring that every element was flawless for her much-anticipated night. "Rebecca, I want this evening to be utterly impeccable," she informed me on Friday morning, her gaze lingering on the guest roster for the 10th perusal. "Daniel deserves to have his accomplishments acknowledged with the dignity they command." The thought of Daniel's success, the stark irony of it, struck a sharp chord within me. My son had labored through 16-hour days, for months to secure that promotion, forsaking time with friends, his personal pursuits, even me, all to provide Luna with the opulent lifestyle she demanded, completely oblivious to the fact that she had systematically defrauded him for 7 years. That afternoon, while Luna was away for her weekly spa indulgence, a rendezvous I now recognized as her clandestine meetings with Marcus, I placed a call to Samuel Hayes. "Are you entirely certain you wish to proceed with this today?" he inquired, his tone laced with caution. "Once you unseal that Pandora's box, there's no closing it." "I am sure," I responded, surprised by the newfound resolve in my voice. "My son deserves to know the unvarnished truth." "Very well. I have dispatched all the supplementary documentation you requested via express mail. It should arrive by this afternoon. And Mrs. Collins, exercise extreme caution. Carmen can be quite volatile when she feels cornered." The package arrived precisely at 4 in the afternoon. Within its contents were officially verified copies of every crucial piece of information: the police reports originating from Nevada, the marriage certificates confirming Luna's existing legal union with Robert Sanchez, the bank statements detailing the illicit transfers, and even pertinent details concerning Elena Vasquez and her inexplicable disappearance. To my astonishment, there was an additional item: candid photographs of Luna and Marcus, captured that very afternoon at a downtown hotel. Samuel had diligently fulfilled my directive to procure recent, undeniable evidence that they could neither refute nor rationalize. As I meticulously arranged all the documents in their chronological sequence, an unusual sense of tranquility enveloped me. After years of feeling utterly powerless, I finally held dominion over a situation. Truth was my armament, and it was honed to a razor's edge. The initial guests began to arrive at 7 o'clock. Luna was resplendent in a sapphire gown that undoubtedly cost more than my monthly rent. She greeted each arrival with effusive embraces and that melodious laughter she employed when aiming to charm. Daniel returned from work precisely on schedule, still clad in his suit, visibly fatigued but beaming at Luna's elaborate efforts to commemorate his achievement. My heart ached witnessing the unfeigned gratitude in his eyes as he bestowed a kiss upon her cheek. "Thank you for arranging all of this, my dear," he murmured. "I understand how much effort this must have entailed." "Anything for you, my love," Luna replied, her voice imbued with that saccharine sweetness she had perfected through years of calculated deceit. Marcus, predictably, was the final arrival. He entered with that air of self-assurance, a smile cultivated through years of profound treachery, embracing Daniel with the camaraderie of a devoted brother. "Congratulations, my friend," he boomed, clapping Daniel heartily on the back with a show of feigned enthusiasm. "You absolutely deserve this." "You deserve it," I thought with a bitter pang. "You deserve to know your supposed best friend has been betraying you for years." The dinner unfolded with the characteristic precision of all Luna's gatherings, a perfectly orchestrated performance, replete with superficial discourse and manufactured merriment. I served each course in quiet deference, an invisible presence as always, observing the charade from the periphery. During the dessert course, Luna rose, a wineglass in hand. "I wish to propose a toast," she announced, her voice resonating throughout the dining room. "To my wonderful husband Daniel, who works so diligently to afford us this beautiful life, and to our dear friends, particularly Marcus, who has been like a brother to us all these years." All present raised their glasses. Marcus offered Luna a subtle wink, a gesture discernible only to my observant eyes. Daniel glowed with pride, utterly oblivious to the fact that he was toasting his own profound betrayal. "And of course," Luna continued, her gaze sweeping towards me in the kitchen, "to family and to those who understand their rightful place and purpose in our lives." That final pronouncement, their place and their role, as if I were merely an employee rather than the mother who had nurtured the man supporting her, was the ultimate affront. I slowly removed my apron and walked into the dining room. A wave of surprise rippled through the guests. I never interrupted Luna's meticulously planned dinners. "Luna," I stated, my voice steady yet clear, "I believe there is something you ought to witness." Her smile faltered momentarily. "Rebecca, we are in the midst of a celebration. Whatever it is can assuredly wait." I remained silent, withdrawing the envelope from my apron. This cannot wait. The ensuing silence in the dining room was palpable. Daniel regarded me with a look of utter bewilderment, while Marcus visibly paled. "What is that?" Luna inquired, though her tone betrayed an unsettling premonition that she already knew. "It's a gift," I replied, extending the envelope to her, "much like the one I had intended to present you with. $40,000, meticulously saved over many years in the futile hope of earning your respect." Luna blinked, clearly disoriented by my uncharacteristic demeanor. "But after Daniel's birthday celebration last week," I continued, "I concluded you deserve something distinct, something far more fitting." With hands that trembled perceptibly, Luna accepted the envelope. The stillness in the room was so profound that the crinkling of the paper as she opened it was distinctly audible. The first item revealed was the photograph, a stark, unambiguous image of her and Marcus in a compromising embrace just outside the downtown hotel, captured mere hours prior. The color drained from her face entirely. Her legs faltered, and for a fleeting moment I thought she might collapse. "Ah, what? What is this?" she whispered, though the answer was obvious to us both. "Continue perusing," I advised calmly. "There is more." With fingers that still betrayed a tremor, Luna revealed the next document, a certified copy of the marriage certificate between Carmen Valdez and Robert Sanchez, dated 2 years before her supposed wedding to Daniel. Marcus had abruptly risen from his seat, his face a tableau of sheer panic. Daniel's gaze darted between the photograph and his wife, struggling to comprehend the unfolding revelation. "Luna," Daniel uttered, his voice a mere whisper, "what is this?" But Luna offered no response. Her eyes were fixed on the third document, a police report from Nevada that identified her as Carmen Valdez, a fugitive wanted for marital fraud. It was at this juncture that she succumbed. It wasn't a graceful swoon, as depicted in cinematic dramas. It was a complete, utter, devastating collapse. Her body folded inward as if struck by an unseen force, and she crumpled to her knees upon the dining room floor. The assembled guests recoiled, some gasping audibly. Marcus lunged towards her, only to halt abruptly as Daniel fixed him with a gaze I had never before witnessed on my son's face. "Do not dare lay a hand on her," Daniel commanded, his voice dangerously low. "Do not dare touch my wife." "Daniel, brother, I can explain," Marcus stammered. "Explain what?" Daniel held the photograph aloft, his hand shaking. "Explain why my best friend is intimately involved with my wife. Explain why my wife apparently has an alias and a prior husband." Luna sobbed on the floor, her tears not of remorse but of sheer panic. The anguish of a woman whose meticulously constructed life had just shattered around her. "There are further documents within the envelope," I stated softly, addressing Daniel. "Considerably more." Daniel swept the contents of the envelope onto the dining room table. Bank statements, additional photographs, police reports, all strewn haphazardly before the very guests who had gathered to celebrate his success. The ensuing silence was absolute. 12 individuals stared at the undeniable proof of a betrayal so profound, so devastating, that speech seemed an impossibility. Finally, Daniel spoke, his voice fractured but resolute. "I request that everyone depart immediately." The guests needed no further prompting. They rose and exited in solemn silence, some murmuring hurried apologies, others fleeing the palpable awkwardness. Marcus was the last to stir. He approached Daniel, hands outstretched in supplication. "Daniel, please allow me to elucidate. Circumstances became convoluted, but our intention was never to cause you harm." My son regarded him with a chilling detachment that surprised me. "Leave my residence," he stated quietly, "and should I ever encounter you near my family again, I will not hesitate to contact the authorities." Marcus glanced at Luna, still weeping on the floor, then at me. His eyes met mine, and I glimpsed something within them that sent a shiver down my spine. It was not regret. It was a veiled threat. After Marcus departed, Daniel knelt beside Luna, not to offer solace, but to question. "How much of this is truthful?" he asked. Luna raised her head, and for the first time in 7 years, I saw her authentic visage, stripped bare of the pretense of the devoted wife, devoid of the performance of the grateful daughter-in-law. It was the face of Carmen Valdez, the consummate con artist. "All of it," she whispered. "Every word is true." And with those 3 words, my son's marriage dissolved. The days that followed the dinner felt like witnessing a colossal structure crumble in agonizing slow motion. Luna, or rather Carmen, as we now knew her true identity, remained on the dining room floor for nearly an hour after the guests had departed. She lay there, weeping, trembling, her murmurs incoherent, lamenting the catastrophic turn of events. Daniel sat in his chair, his gaze fixed upon the scattered documents on the table. He neither shouted nor erupted in fury, as I had anticipated. Instead, a profound stillness emanated from him, a stillness far more unsettling than any outburst of rage. "Mom," he finally articulated, his voice barely audible. "How long have you been aware of this?" The question pierced me like an arrow. 6 weeks, I admitted. "My suspicions began to form 2 months ago, but I lacked concrete proof until 6 weeks ago." He nodded slowly, as if absorbing every syllable. "Why did you not inform me sooner?" "Because," I replied with unvarnished honesty, "I knew she would devise a way to make you doubt me, and because I needed absolute certainty." That night, Daniel remained awake until 4 in the morning, poring over every document, verifying every minute detail. Carmen had retreated to the master bedroom and had not emerged since. Through the walls, I could discern her occasional cries, but they no longer conveyed remorse. They resonated with self-pity. The following day, Daniel engaged legal counsel. Margaret Thompson, a formidable woman in her 60s, specialized in complex divorce proceedings and cases of marital fraud. Upon examining the extensive evidence compiled by Samuel, her eyes gleamed with the satisfaction of a predator who had discovered an exceptionally easy target. "This is more than sufficient," she assured Daniel during their initial consultation. "The marriage can be declared null and void due to bigamy. She is entitled to no marital assets. In fact, we could pursue legal action against her for the $250,000 she pilfered." Yet Daniel's inherent goodness proved to be his undoing, even in the face of such egregious revelations. "I simply wish for her to depart," he confided in me that evening. "I desire for her to vanish from our lives permanently." Carmen had remained confined to the room for 3 days when she finally descended. Her appearance was disheveled. Her eyes were red and swollen, her hair disarrayed, and she wore the same attire from the night of the dinner. However, upon spotting me in the kitchen, a discernible shift occurred in her expression. Desperation transmuted into something far more menacing. "This is your doing," she accused, her voice hoarse from excessive weeping. "You have shattered my life." I turned slowly to face her. "I have not destroyed anything, Carmen. You constructed your existence upon a foundation of falsehoods, and lies, as we both know, inevitably crumble," her features contorted with palpable fury. "My name is Luna. I am Luna Miller Collins. I have been an integral part of this family for 7 years." "Your name is Carmen Valdez," I countered calmly, "and you were never truly a member of this family. You were a parasite feeding upon it." It was at this point that she launched her assault. She lunged at me, her fingernails extended, unleashing a torrent of obscenities. For a terrifying moment, I genuinely feared for my life, but Daniel materialized in the kitchen at the critical juncture, seizing her by the arms and pulling her away from me. "Release me!" Carmen shrieked. "This old hag has ruined everything I worked for." "What you worked for?" Daniel inquired, his voice as cold as ice. "Was to steal my life." It was the first time I had ever witnessed genuine anger in my son, not a volatile outburst, but a deep, controlled fury. Carmen must have perceived something in his eyes as well, for she ceased her struggle and collapsed against him, sobbing uncontrollably. "Daniel, please," she pleaded. "I acknowledge my errors, but I love you. Truly, I love you. We can overcome this." Daniel shoved her away as if she were a repulsive entity. "You have no comprehension of love, Carmen. Your sole expertise lies in its manipulation." The ensuing days were a blur of legal proceedings. Margaret Thompson initiated the annulment process, froze their joint bank accounts, and filed a civil suit for the misappropriated funds. Carmen had retained her own legal representative, a visibly nervous man who had clearly recognized the insurmountable nature of his client's case. However, Carmen harbored one final gambit. A week following the confrontation in the kitchen, the police arrived. 2 stern-faced officers requested to speak with me regarding certain allegations. Carmen had lodged a formal complaint, asserting that I had subjected her to harassment, made threats, and fabricated evidence against her. She claimed the photographs had been digitally altered and that the documents pertaining to her past were malicious fabrications. "She is a bitter, elderly woman who could never accept me," she had told the detective. "She is attempting to sabotage my marriage out of jealousy for my relationship with her son." Fortunately, Samuel Hayes had foreseen this contingency. He possessed certified copies of all pertinent documents, sworn testimonies from sources in Nevada, and forensic analysis confirming the photographs had not undergone any manipulation. The police investigation concluded after precisely 3 days. leading to the dismissal of Carmen's accusations as unfounded. However, the damage to her credibility was catastrophic. Her own attorney resigned upon discovering that she had misled him on several crucial aspects of her case. It was then that Marcus reappeared. He had remained in seclusion for 2 weeks, likely observing the unfolding events and awaiting a lull in the storm. However, upon realizing Carmen's deteriorating position, he opted to safeguard his own interests. He presented himself at Margaret Thompson's office, accompanied by his own legal counsel, offering to provide testimony against Carmen in exchange for immunity. He had detailed records of all financial transactions, copies of incriminating text messages, and evidence of other schemes they had jointly orchestrated. Marcus Holloway is a shrewd individual, Margaret explained to me after their meeting. He understood that Carmen would drag him down with her if he didn't act proactively. His testimony solidifies the case entirely. Carmen learned of Marcus's betrayal that same afternoon. Her reaction was, even by her standards, spectacular. She appeared at the residence, screaming incoherently, smashing household items, and threatening to expose the truth about everyone involved. "Marcus and I were a united front," she shrieked as Daniel contacted the authorities. "If I am imprisoned, he will be implicated, and so will you, Daniel. You will all pay." However, her threats proved hollow. Lacking Marcus as an accomplice, devoid of the financial resources for competent legal representation, and facing overwhelming evidence against her, Carmen possessed no capacity to inflict further harm on anyone. The police apprehended her that evening for violating a restraining order that Daniel had secured days earlier. She remained incarcerated for 3 days before managing to post bail. Upon her release, she was transformed. The furious, desperate woman from before was gone. In her place was something far more perilous, an individual who had accepted the totality of her losses and now sought only to inflict maximum damage. "This is not over," she declared to me when she arrived to collect her belongings under police escort. "You may have triumphed in this skirmish, Rebecca, but I possess knowledge of this family that could utterly dismantle you all." I met her gaze directly. "You no longer wield any power here, Carmen. You can no longer harm my family." She offered a smile, devoid of any genuine mirth. "We shall see." 3 days later, Carmen Valdez vanished. She packed her most valuable possessions overnight and simply disappeared. She left no forwarding address, no indication of her destination. One day she was present. The next she had receded from existence as if she had never been. Daniel discovered a note in the master bedroom. "This is not over. I will return when you least expect it." Yet I knew with certainty that she would not return. Carmen was a predator, and predators invariably seek the path of least resistance. Daniel was no longer an easy target. He was no longer the naive individual he had been upon their initial encounter. Marcus also departed. Following his testimony against Carmen, he liquidated his assets and relocated to another state. He had not only lost his accomplice, but also the lifelong friend whose trust he had systematically violated. For the first time in 7 years, the house was infused with a profound sense of tranquility. The pervasive tension had dissipated. The need to tread on eggshells had ceased, and the pretense of normalcy, when everything was clearly amiss, had been abandoned. Daniel had endured the loss of a wife and a confidant, but he had gained something infinitely more valuable, the truth. And after an extended period immersed in deception, the truth felt akin to liberation. However, I understood that the genuine process of healing had only just commenced. 6 months subsequent to Carmen's disappearance, Daniel and I were seated in the backyard, savoring our morning coffee in a comfortable silence that had been absent for years. The lawn was verdant and meticulously maintained. The floral arrangements I had planted were in full bloom. unburdened by the persistent anxiety that had long permeated the household. "Mom," Daniel finally broke the quietude, "I never properly expressed my gratitude for what you did." I placed my cup on its saucer and met his gaze. My son had undergone a significant transformation during these intervening months. The lines of stress etched around his eyes had softened. He had regained the weight I hadn't realized he had lost, and for the first time in years, he radiated a palpable sense of peace. "You need not thank me for safeguarding our family," I replied. "But I do need to apologize," he continued, his voice thick with emotion. "For 7 years, I permitted Carmen to treat you deplorably. I witnessed your service, your diligence, and your endurance of her humiliations, and I failed to intervene." A lump formed in my throat. "Were you truly in love, Daniel, or did you merely believe yourself to be?" "No," he stated firmly. "That is no justification. You are my mother. You raised me single-handedly after Dad's passing. You labored tirelessly through 2 jobs to finance my education. You sacrificed everything for me, and I allowed a stranger to treat you as though you were invisible in your own home." Tears began to stream down my cheeks. We had engaged in numerous conversations during these past months, but this was the first instance where Daniel had genuinely confronted his complicity in the unfolding events. "For years I pondered," I admitted. "Why did you not defend me? Why did you never perceive Carmen's actions? I even began to question if there was something inherently wrong with me." Daniel closed his eyes, the pain evident on his features. "My God, Mum, Carmen was exceptionally adept at manipulating me. Every time I sensed something amiss, she offered a plausible explanation. She claimed you were difficult, that you harbored jealousy towards our relationship, that you required firm boundaries due to your demanding nature." "And you believed her?" "I wanted to believe her," he confessed. "It was simpler to attribute the problem to you than to confront the unsettling possibility that my supposedly perfect wife was, in fact, a deceiver." We lapsed into silence for several minutes, processing years of accumulated pain and misunderstanding. "Do you know what caused me the most profound hurt?" I finally inquired. Daniel lowered his head, his voice thick with emotion. "After all that I've invested in you, all the years I've poured my love and unwavering devotion into our relationship, you chose to place your trust in a woman you've known for mere years, rather than believing the mother who has been a constant presence throughout your entire existence." He then rose from his seat and knelt by mine, gently taking my hands. "You're absolutely right," he confessed, his voice cracking, "and there's no justifying my actions. But please know this, I will never ever permit anyone to mistreat you in that manner again. And from this moment forward, I will never doubt your word when you tell me something is amiss." I embraced him tightly, feeling as though I had finally reclaimed the son I had lost to a stranger for so many years. The ensuing weeks unveiled further developments. Margaret Thompson had managed to retrieve $80,000 from the funds that Carmen and Marcus had pilfered. While not the entirety of the stolen sum, it represented a significant recovery. Daniel allocated a portion of this recovered money towards renovating our home, systematically erasing every vestige of Carmen's influence. "I want this to feel like your sanctuary again, Mum," he explained as the renovation crew began stripping away the wallpaper Carmen had selected. "I want you to feel truly at home here once more." He also insisted on returning the $40,000 I had set aside for Carmen. "That money is rightfully yours," he stated when I initially demurred. "You saved it from your own Social Security, and I want you to indulge yourself with it. Travel, pursue your passions, anything that brings you joy." For the first time in many years, I possessed a sum of money that was entirely my own. It wasn't designated for family needs or unforeseen emergencies. It was solely for my personal enjoyment. I resolved to dedicate it to pursuits Carmen had always discouraged. I redecorated my personal space, acquired a collection of books, and even enrolled in art classes at the local community centre. However, the most profound transformation was evident in Daniel himself. Freed from Carmen's constant manipulations, my son began to rediscover his true self. He resumed cooking, an activity he genuinely loved, but which Carmen had relentlessly belittled. He rekindled his passion for photography. He even reconnected with friends whom Carmen had subtly alienated over the years. "It feels like I've awakened from an incredibly long slumber," he confided in me one evening, "a dream where I wasn't truly myself." Yet the ultimate measure of our collective healing arrived when Daniel began dating someone new. Sarah was a 42-year-old nurse, a divorcee with 2 teenage children. She stood in stark contrast to Carmen in every conceivable way: practical versus glamorous, forthright rather than devious, and genuinely kind as opposed to calculatedly charming. The first time Daniel inquired about my opinion of her, my heart skipped a beat. For years I had grown accustomed to suppressing my own thoughts and feelings, offering agreeable nods regardless of my true sentiments. "I want your candid assessment, Mom," he urged. "If there's anything about Sarah that concerns you, I need you to tell me. I will never again disregard your intuition about people." "I like her," I responded, and it was the unvarnished truth. "She's authentic. She isn't attempting to impress you, and most importantly, she treats you with genuine respect, not that superficial admiration Carmen used to ensnare you." Daniel's smile was immediate. "That's precisely what I felt." Sarah began joining us for our Sunday dinners, occasionally bringing her children along. It was a welcome change to have youngsters in the house again, filling the quiet spaces that had echoed with silence for so long. Sarah consistently offered to help with the meal preparations, treating me as an equal rather than an overlooked domestic. "Mrs. Collins," she addressed me one afternoon as we were washing dishes together, "Daniel has shared some of what transpired with his ex-wife. I want you to be assured that I fully respect your position in his life. This is your home, your family. I am merely a visitor." Tears welled in my eyes. "Please call me Rebecca," I said, "and you are absolutely not just a guest. If Daniel finds happiness with you, then you are more than welcome here." Approximately 1 year after Carmen's disappearance, we received our final communication regarding her. She had been apprehended in Florida under an assumed identity, facing accusations of defrauding an 80-year-old gentleman. It appeared she had reverted to her familiar patterns, but this time she had targeted the wrong individual, a retired detective who saw through her deceit almost immediately. "Do you harbor any feelings for her?" Daniel asked after we learned the news. I paused to consider. "Pity," I finally confessed. "Pity for someone who never grasped that genuine relationships, built on authentic love, hold far more value than anything that can be stolen or manipulated." Daniel nodded in agreement. "I feel much the same, and a sense of profound relief that she is so far removed from our lives." Marcus had also been apprehended in Nevada, facing charges stemming from his past fraudulent activities. Apparently, his cooperation in testifying against Carmen had not been sufficient to shield him from the consequences of his own transgressions. The last report indicated he was serving a 5-year prison sentence. During the second year following Carmen's departure, Daniel and Sarah became engaged. This time Daniel sought my approval before making the proposal. "Are you certain this is the right path?" I inquired, not out of doubt regarding Sarah, but to confirm Daniel was making this decision for the correct reasons. "I am absolutely certain," he affirmed, "but this time I intend to approach it differently. No elaborate ceremonies, no attempts to dazzle anyone. just our closest family, those who genuinely cherish us. Daniel and Sarah's wedding was everything his initial union had not been: intimate, deeply heartfelt, and brimming with authentic affection rather than ostentatious display. They requested that I escort Daniel down the aisle, a symbolic acknowledgement of my integral role in his life. "You are the most important woman in my life," he declared as we walked, "and I want Sarah and everyone else to understand that." Now, 3 years after the initial turmoil, I find myself seated in the very same backyard where Daniel and I had that pivotal conversation. This time, however, I am not alone. Sarah is beside me, patiently demonstrating how to navigate a tablet to view photographs of her children attending college. Daniel is in the kitchen preparing lunch for us all, humming a soft tune as he works. The house is once again alive with genuine life, not the fabricated perfection Carmen had orchestrated, but the beautifully imperfect yet profoundly joyful existence of a true family. At times I ponder the alternative path. What if I had never found the fortitude to expose Carmen? What if I had remained silent, enduring her humiliations, watching my son be manipulated and defrauded without intervention? But that question no longer holds relevance. I made the correct decision at the opportune moment. I protected my family in the only way I knew how, with unwavering patience, with irrefutable evidence, and with the unassailable power of truth. And now, for the first time in many years, we are all precisely where we are meant to be. Did you appreciate my narrative? And from which city are you listening? Let's connect in the comments section. If you enjoyed the story, consider supporting me with a super thanks, enabling me to continue sharing similar narratives. Your generous support is deeply appreciated. I eagerly await your thoughts on the story. On your screen, you'll find 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. My channel offers a wealth of additional content. Please remember to subscribe. Until our next life story, with love and respect,